Welcome to Mind Matters, where we take a peek inside the human mind to understand how it affects our attitudes and behaviors. I'm Liezl Thome, and with me is renowned psychologist Dr Eugene VIljoen, who will help us understand ourselves and the people around us a bit better. Hello, Eugene.
Hi Liezl, welcome on my couch.
Thank you for the invitation. So let's start with mental health. What is that?
Mental health is a collective word for the way in which we function on an emotional, a psychological and a social basis. And the way in which all those things combine gives us the opportunity to cope with our environments. And that's mental health.
So how does mental health impact on our day-to-day existence?
Quite largely so. And I think because we are interactive creatures, we need to interact with our outside environment. And the outside environment is basically known for all the different threats that imposes on us as human beings, whether that is in the workplace, whether it is maybe in your personal life, or whether maybe just on a day-to-day basis. We need to know how to counteract those different threats, and that is our survivability. And that's why something like our mental health is extremely important, because that enables us to cope with our environmental stressors.
So when you talk about this environment that is so negative, that's not the way most of us perceive the world, is it?
I think within our context, it's definitely a problem, because we are inundated with information on a daily basis from all over the world, and obviously bad news in a way sort of sells, and that is what we are confronted with. And in a way, I think maybe more so now than maybe previously, people get information from all over, and it just creates quite a world where people feel threatened.
But surely, Eugene, if we are constantly getting messages that life is threatening, that we are unsafe, surely that must have a negative impact on our mental health?
Yes, definitely. It's one of the biggest aspects that we need to balance in our minds the whole time. And that is, what sense do you make from the outside information and the way in which you feel threatened, and how you can balance that with the way in which you can cope.
Mm-hmm. So mental health, are there things that we do apart from watching the news that negatively impact our mental health?
Yes, I think some bad habits, things like being inactive, not being socially interactive with other people, maybe isolated in itself, does create certain bad environments in which we definitely not thrive.
So what can we do to improve our mental health? Or rather, is there something we can do to improve our mental health?
Yes, there's quite a lot of research that has been done in terms of what constitutes a good sort of mental health profile. And it is the way in which we perceive ourselves in terms of what we mean to the outside world and other people. So what can we do? We can make sure that we have a very good support structure. We can make sure that we are cognizant of the way in which we cope with our stressors, and we can exercise. It also helps to improve mental health.
It's very interesting that a physical activity can improve what is going on here between our ears. How does that work?
Well, we must remember that we are biological entities, firstly. So exercise in itself helps us to have improved oxygenization of the brain, and secondly, it improves all the neurotransmitters and the way in which they are being manufactured. And all of that relates directly back to exercise.
Mm-hmm. Throughout the ages, the wise men, the sages, the philosophers had this idea that you start at knowing yourself. Before you can know anything else, before you can know the world, before you can know the Creator, you have to know yourself. But who is the self that they talk about?
Well, again, I think that is maybe a collective in terms of who are we? We are basically what we've inherited genetically from our parents, or maybe even from the families that we come from. It's also all the different experiences that you've had, all the traumas that you've had, your education that you've had, the different skills that you've acquired over a lifetime. That makes out to become the self. Many people are not really aware of what the self is, and I think we will get to that over time in these episodes of us.
Eugene, when we look at mental hygiene, what is that?
That's the way in which you look after yourself. We can groom ourselves on a daily basis in terms of going to spas and sort of look at the exterior, but we also need to look at our psychological well-being. And that's the whole concept that I think that forms part of mental hygiene. Mental hygiene is therefore a sub-part of our mental health, and that is how we look after ourselves.
And how would we do that?
I think by being aware of what would stress you, how you cope with your outside world, what type of stressors you have in your life. And we all have different ones, and we all connect to them in a different way. So I think the first aspect would be awareness.
I was always under the impression that stress is something that happens to you. And it took me a while to realize that even if things are not happening to me, even if I'm not worried about my job or my bank balance or the children, things inside my body can also be stressors, including something like pain. Does that have an impact on our mental health?
Yes, definitely. Pain influences our mental health in a major way. People are usually very scared when they need to go in for operations, that it's not so much the operation that they're scared of, but it is the concomitant pain that they might be suffering. Painful conditions, like fibromyalgia for instance, is a painful condition in the muscles, and there's a personality attached to fibromyalgia, and that is usually someone with an A-type personality, someone that's quite anxious, someone that might be depressed, someone that does not necessarily know how to balance the outward stressors, and they bring it inward and the body reacts in the form of pain.
So there's a definite link between pain, mental health issues, and I've also heard, and tell me where I'm wrong, that pain can cause depression. Long-term pain can cause depression.
There is definitely a relation between pain and depression.
So over the next few episodes, we will look at the impact the mind has on the body and on our environment. Join me next week. Goodbye.